We all know how important regulations come into play in our industry. It's a highly regulated world, and so we're going to go over some of those details. My name is Jesse. I've been with Park Street for 8 years. And just so you have additional background from what Emily had mentioned, we're a national importer in the EU, or we're an importer into the EU. We're a national importer into the U.S. and also a distributor. So we'll weave in some comparisons there since we have kind of a unique insight on both sides. And my goal here is to give you, it's hard to break down every market. Like every market is different, right? And especially when it comes to laws and that, even in the States, it's the same. So I'm going to kind of give you like a general understanding, but just know every country is going to be, especially if you ask them, they'll tell you too. Every country is going to be a little bit different, but there'll be some generalizations. So overview of just the general regulatory environment, the labels, how the VAT system works, and some common payment arrangements that we've seen between suppliers and customers. So those of you familiar with the three-tier system in the U.S., there is no three-tier system in the EU, nor a TTB equivalent. No real tied house laws, meaning if you're not familiar with that, a distributor also having some influence or ownership in retail outlets, or a brand having influence in retail outlets, that type of thing. For the most part, an importer could sell to even a consumer many times. A distributor can have some retail outlets or have some ownership in them and that type of thing. So it's very, I don't want to say it's not regulated. It definitely is, but to a lesser extent. Another item here is producers can sell many times directly to retailers. There's going to be some variation in that, right, with specific to the country that they're selling into, but it's kind of the opposite in the U.S. where producers don't have the capability to sell to retailers, right? With very few exceptions, they do. But and either way, though, really on both sides, brands still tend to work through distributors, obviously for scale and support efforts. Now, the spirits labels. So the concept of a global label has come up with some brands that we've worked with, a couple more than once. And there's really just no possibility of that because, one, for example, the pregnancy symbol in the EU, it's not even allowed in the US, right? We have a different warning statement. So that kind of nullifies that concept right there. And even within different EU countries, you have different requirements. So not even, the world, there's just no way to do that. But it has come up. It's been an idea. As I said, each EU member state has different requirements as well. Some are more strict than others. I think Greece is one of them. Germany, there's example a long time ago that a supplier we were working with, the distributor actually brought this up about the font size. There was an issue with the font size with their distributor, and they would actually take a ruler to measure it, which was kind of funny. I don't know if that's common here or not. Yeah, I don't know if it's common, but we thought that kind of stood out. And so the point being is just make sure you're working with your country-specific distributor to make sure you run the labels by them first to make sure it's good. That way, the whole concept really is just avoiding headaches before you ship product and then not being able to sell it for whatever reason, or having extra costs because we got to relabel product at the warehouse and that type of thing. So and the other thing that you may not have thought of is making sure the labels meet the export requirements of the country you're exporting from. So this is in particular like with Mexico or any denomination of origin countries with the DOs. We worked with a supplier long ago, a brand, or not that long ago, but the Mexican authorities, the CRT, classified it as a tequila, naturally. but it had some, I forget the exact type, it was like flavored tequila. And so in the EU, it was going to be classified as a specialty spirit, I believe. And so it met the requirements of the EU, but it didn't meet the requirements to export it from Mexico. So then they had to work on both sides. So that's just something to keep in mind. I don't think that comes up so often, but in certain countries, I think probably Mexico is one of them. It can. Now on to everyone's favorite topic, taxes. Who loves paying taxes? No one. Only me. Okay. So that value-added tax. So how this works, it's really passed the payment responsibility of VAT is passed from one trade buyer to the next, right? So you have an importer. Many times the importer is the distributor, right? In our case, we don't locally distribute to retail, but we import EU-wide, and then sell to distributors. And so we'll pass that VAT to the distributor. The distributor will pass it to the retailer, and ultimately you see VAT on the retail shelf price and the consumer's paying it, right? And VAT varies between EU member states. So it's similar in the U.S. to state excise taxes, where it's going to vary in every country, every state, that type of thing. And there's a system that the EU Commission uses to monitor and control the excise goods, such as tobacco, alcohol, energy products. And that system's called the Excise Movement and Control System, the EMCS. And this just helps ensure compliance with the payment of excise goods, as well as helps prevent fiscal fraud during the movement of those goods throughout their journey. The excise number is different than a VAT number. A VAT number is going to be tied to the company. Excise number is different. So that's just one quick thing is you want to know your distributor's or customer's excise number. That way it can be passed on to them, and it's part of the tracking system. A quick note, I know they're not part of the EU, of course. A quick note on the UK, just because they're always interested. It's a big market. They actually have duty stamps, and I believe there might be one or two other countries within the EU that do this. But paying for these stamps that go on the bottles actually covers the excise tax. It's essentially you're paying for the excise tax. So some common payment arrangements with customers. Of course, there's going to be some countries with more mandated rules, but there's a lot of just general norms. If we're generalizing again, so it's going to vary from customer to customer, but it's more about risk assessment and credit ratings and assessing distributors' credit, customers' credit. And so with distributors, the ones with strong credit, you might give them extended payment terms, right? Like 60 days, 90 days, whatnot. Distributors with poor credit, you might require them to prepay for the full order. But either way, from our vantage point, we've seen it common for a partial prepayment. So maybe 50% a distributor pays up front, and then they pay the rest on whatever terms are agreed upon. Retailers, it's really just part of the negotiation process. One of the factors, right? You're talking about pricing, margins, sales and marketing support. Payment terms are just another one of those. Although you won't really have as much negotiation or leverage with, of course, the bigger players, the bigger retail outlets. And some countries may mandate the payment terms, particularly when it comes to smaller suppliers.